Alright. Welcome back, and we are going to do our first wiring exercise now that we have wired our breaker box in with our 2-wire cable. So you should be getting a sheet that has the wiring diagrams. This will be in an email and also in a handout. It has a rubric on it. If you're at home, obviously it'll be pretty hard for me to grade each one that you do, but we are going to look at first, how do we do the outlet? So we're going to take a look at the diagram. We can see that we have 2-wire cable coming in from the power source. Okay, 2-wire cable, which has a black wire. Let's review: black wire, a white wire, and a ground wire. And this diagram is following grounding a metal box. We don't have metal boxes, but we have grounding screws to our outlets. So what we're going to look at first is, where does the hot wire go? The hot wire goes, here we go. The hot wire goes to the brass screw on the outlet, or the duplex receptacle. And we are only wiring one. The white wire goes to the silver one. And we're going to pick one of those up in a second to show you the difference. And then the grounding wire goes to the green screw. This is the most basic wiring exercise that we have. And it only uses the 2-wire cable coming from the power source. Once we get to the light switch in the next one, we will be adding more cable into our exercises, as well as more gang boxes or receptacle boxes, light switch boxes, the blue boxes. So first, we need to look what we've done already. So we have our 2-wire cable coming in from the power source. It is 14 gauge. It has, like we said before, the black wire, the copper wire, and the white wire. We've already stripped our insulation 6 inches. 6 inches is regulation. That was the cable insulation. Now we have to strip each one of the wires. But first, we're going to look at our outlet. Okay, and there we go. Our outlet, or duplex receptacle, they're actually most likely put in wrong. They're supposed to be upside down. Fun fact. But we are so used to them being like this, where the 2 prongs are on top and the ground prong is on the bottom. These 2 screws up here, like we reviewed in class, are for mounting it to the box, which we will do. And it has 2 sets of screws. It has a silver set of screws for the white wire and a brass set of screws for the black, or the hot wire. And then there's this green grounding screw down here. Okay, you'll also notice that there's 2 screws on each side. One of your exercises is going to be wiring a switched outlet. These are often found in living rooms and bedrooms, where you can plug a lamp in and then you can simply turn your lamp on and off by using a light switch. And that is just simply done by breaking out this little tab right here. But for our purposes today, our basic wiring activity, we are just going to wire it as a whole unit, where it has power constantly to the outlet, or duplex receptacle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to take my wires, and I'm going to come in closer for this and angle down. There we go. And I'm going to strip off wire using my electrical pliers. Oh. There we go. Getting used to this camera. So we're going to strip off using our gauge. So this is 14 gauge wire, solid, and we're going to take off a little over a ½ inch. Okay, a generous ½ inch. So we crimp and then we pull the insulation off. We've practiced this before, and we're going to crimp and pull the insulation off. Okay, so ideally this cable would be stapled up. We're not going to staple it to the stud, simply because it would be a lot of work to undo that every time we are going to do our activities. So now I'm going to spread my wires apart. and use my needle nose pliers to make my loops. So remember, our loops from our other practices need to be clockwise with the screw. And if we take a look at our outlet, we can check which way the screw is going, and you are going to bend your loop up. And you're going to make a fairly small loop, okay? And I will show you the side of it in a second. The loop should be 2/3 or half to 2/3 away around the screw post. So your loop does not need to be very big. That's why you're using the needle nose pliers, and it looks right like that. So I'm going to do the same thing to all of these. So if we take a look at this now, on the white side, we are screwing it. If I take my screwdriver, clockwise is this way. Okay, so we're still going to have our loop. Okay, our loop is going to go down on this side. Okay, you can always rearrange your wires later. So I take the top of my wire with my pliers and bend. Then I come back and I bend this back a little bit. So notice how small my loop is. That post on your outlet or any of your appliances, or what we're calling them, is going to be pretty small. So these are screwed out all the way. And we are going to put the black one in on the top. And you're going to have to work it in there a little bit. You're not probably going to get it on the first try. But notice that the insulation is stripped off just to the point where that little brass plate is underneath, or the metal plate. So I've got it in there securely, and it's going clockwise. Okay, and I'm going to screw that down. Nice and snug, and then I'm going to squeeze it. So that one's good. Now I'm going to come over to the white wire. Then this one is clockwise this way. So I'm going to screw it out all the way again. I'm going to come in, hook my wire in. Okay, notice my insulation is just matching up. And I'm going to screw this in as well. Nice and firmly. So we're not using the bottom screws, and we don't have to. So white wire. See, I didn't get that snug enough. I want to really get that very snug so that that doesn't go anywhere. Okay, so white wire to silver or white screw, and our brass wire or black wire to our brass screw. Hot wire, neutral wire, ground wire. So now we got to put the ground wire on, and we're going to make a little loop just like the other ones, following our diagram. And this one is going to be just like the white wire. So I'm going to bend it towards me. Nice little loop. And this one doesn't have any insulation. So I'm then going to slide that on the post, right like that. Then I'm going to screw that in. Okay. A little more. Nice and snug. Okay, notice that you can't see any of the wire around the edges of the screw. That means I made my loop nice and small. Okay, and you can also see when you're doing the ground screw in particular how it can wind around as you're tightening. So I'm just gonna tighten these other screws in a little bit. This would prevent shorting out if any wires had extra insulation, which they do not. We did that in this demonstration pretty perfectly, actually. Okay, and this would be pretty fixed in here, so these boxes have been used a few times. We would push all of our wires in neatly, and now we're going to screw our outlet into the holes on the gang box. Okay, I use my fingers first just to get the screws aligned. So this one has to get the line down here. And then you're going to use your screwdriver. This one is, you can use either your Phillips or your flathead for this. I'm actually going to use a Phillips screwdriver to screw these in. And this firmly mounts the outlet to the box, making it able to pull your plug of whatever you're plugging in. Very solid. So this is going to keep on screwing all the way in. And the boxes are threaded. That's why we don't have any pointy screws on there. And some of the appliances have these missing. They fall out if the backing isn't on there. So I am going to do that one all the way, and then this one down here. And it takes a little time to screw that in. We're also using a screwdriver so we don't strip it out either, because we're reusing these constantly. Okay, I'm going to screw this top one in a little more. Nice and tight. There we go. So how do we check if we have power? So we don't have any power connected to this at all. And I'm going to zoom back out again and bring up the camera so that you can see the breaker box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this into my outlet that has power. Is just an extension cord in. Okay. Now I'm actually going to take this little three-way out of this. I'm going to plug this in. So now we have power to our unit. And I'm going to flip my breaker on. So now I have power to what I am working on. I worked on this completely powerless. So this is an outlet tester, and it actually can tell you what's wrong with your wiring circuit. I'll come in. There we go, a little closer. So if one in the middle is lit up, we have an open ground, so the ground screw isn't connected. If one is lit up over here, it says open neutral. That means the neutral isn't connected to the right spot. Open hot is when no lights come on. Not grounded, reversed, the red light would come on and the yellow light. Hot, and then reversed, the red and the yellow would come on, and then correct, the two yellows come on. So when I plug this in, it should have the two yellows coming on because I did it correctly. And they do. The two yellows, I don't even have to plug it in all the way, but the two yellows are coming on in my outlet tester. You can easily test it as well with like a night light or something. So I do both of them, but this outlet isn't switched and there's no tabs broken out. So it's not going to make a difference which one I plug it into. But you can plug, like I said, a night light or a lamp or something in to actually test it as well if you don't have one of these handy dandy little devices. So that is the end of wiring our outlet. You could put an outlet cover on. There is one in your kit if you wanted to make it look fancy. For our purposes, we're simply learning how to wire and make the loops and connect them properly. So I'm actually going to rip this apart on camera as well. But first, I don't want to do that. I want to turn my power off, okay? And I want to unplug from my power source in case something would be shorted out for some reason. Now I'm having a completely dead circuit. Now I'm going to take this out of the box, the gang box. So if I was to take this out and not have the power disconnected and I touched the black screw or the white screw, I would get a really big shock. And the number one rule in safety for electrical is that we always work on a dead circuit, never a live circuit. So just to review, I had the white wire coming into the silver screw. my camera closer. Glue it down. Silver wire to the white screw. It is going clockwise, just like it should. And the insulation is just stripped right to where that plate ends. So there would be no shorting out. If your insulation is stripped all the way out to here and it touches the black wire for some reason, and the black wire had a lot of insulation stripped, it would short out. The ground screw is also connected clockwise to the green screw. And then the black or the hot wire is connected clockwise to the brass screw. So I'm going to actually undo all these with my flathead screwdriver because I'm getting ready for my next activity. So I'm going to unscrew all of the screws completely to the point where they stop and they're out all the way. Do not unscrew it from the device itself. And then we are going to wiggle out our loops. Okay, just so you can see how small. So I'm going to start with this one, and you kind of just shimmy it out of there. So the black one went to the brass one. This is the hot wire. The white one went to the silver one, and the non-insulated or the bare wire went to the grounding one. So now for my next exercise, because I want to keep continuing to practice making those loops, I'm going to snip them all off. Okay, I'm going to snip every single one off, and now I'm ready to practice stripping off the insulation again, as well as making a loop. And every time you get a little shorter, your wires get a little shorter, you need to strip off a little bit more cable. And this is where you're going to make a slit in your cable insulation with your utility knife. And you're going to try to expose 6 inches, but you have this excess. The easiest way to get that off would be just to snip it like that. So, in summary, that is how you accomplish this diagram for the wiring one outlet with a 2-wire cable with ground. So there's 3 wires, black, white, and bare. And we showed you how to ground it, how to connect the neutral wire, and how to connect the black wire. And this is the simplest of all of the wiring exercises. So the grading down here is worth 40 points. Time on task would be if I would be spending time with you, watching you, seeing if you're working efficiently or if you're lollygagging. Okay, appearance and neatness, everything was correctly attached and very neat and clean. Your loops were nice and small. If there were splices, they were done very tightly, and the wire nut was secured very tightly. The device is properly grounded. The ground wire is properly attached to the device. So that is one big thing. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And then wiring or following the wiring diagram. The outlet is functional and the wires are properly attached. So that's just the grading sheet for the exercise. Like I said, it's worth 50 points. I would have you take pictures after you are done of the appliance or the device attached to the wire so that I could see how neat it would be before you would rip it apart for the next activity. So, zoom it back out again. This is where we would start for the next activity, which is wiring a single pole switch and a light bulb to a light receptacle. So we will see you in the next video.